There you go. I don't even know what it looks like. That's why I have it on my phone. That's the
I have to say
iPhone 6.
okay.
I like to see what yeah. Okay. All right. Let me share my screen. Well, I probably should say something. Let me see if you're on the screen.
Say something.
Perfect. Okay. Kevin, thanks for taking the time to be on here. This doesn't have to be perfect. This is our first, run of even talking about it, but we've talked about it a number of times. This is all about corporate accounts. Some of it's about contracts with the developer, uh, things that happen after the fact, things that happen in the future. They're all different. They're a little bit different on how they're handled, not handled. And I think the whole purpose of this is just to get a better understanding. I think we have a good understanding, but I'm not sure that everybody does. So I appreciate you being on. And I just wanted to, if you wouldn't mind, just give just a quick blip of your background and sort of who you are.
Yeah, hello, Kevin Leamy, president of Fermi Leamy Land Group. Been doing landscape architecture for 25, I guess, years-ish now. Licensed for the last 20 in California, also licensed in Nevada and Idaho. So we are traditional landscape architects. We do a lot of stuff that gets built. We work mostly with developers, some public work stuff, but most of ours is directly with developers in the residential parks, residential as in communities for streetscapes, entries, park projects, that kind of stuff. Clubhouse.
Right. And then what size would you consider your business as far as, medium size?
We're probably small to mid for a traditional landscape architect. Since we're only landscape architecture, it's probably about middle size. We're not a sole proprietor, but we're not one of the big companies.
Big kahunas, you mean you probably know what you're doing, which is always good, And I do appreciate the fact that it's a side note, but you guys are always open to education regardless of what it is, as long as it's scheduled. And we've done lots of those. They're really good for us too, that we get a better idea of, the kind of things that you're looking for, at least from a product standpoint. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. This is something that's not official. It's you tell me if you don't see it.
Nope, I can see it.
Perfect. So corporate accounts process. You and I talked about this before, and I honestly personally have been struggling with process. I think there needs to be a lot more processes in place so everybody knows in general who they are, what their role is, what they're supposed to do, what they're not supposed to do, what they're supposed to ask for, what they're not supposed to ask for. I mean, there's so many different factors, but I think with what you and I've talked, we can just, narrow it down to a few things. And maybe I just go through and ask you some, questions along the way. So starting, there's a developer agreement. This is typically how we work. We have corporate account people. We've got 2 of them in the US. Farrah is actually in your area. Super good, super smart. Hasn't been with us that long, but picks it up really quickly. So because of that, I've been pushing to make sure that we're all on the same page. So developer agreement is just an agreement basically saying that the project, usually from something that's new, hasn't even been designed yet, hasn't even maybe been contracted yet, but they're going to do 100% waiver. Now, why would they want to do that? Well, it's not just because of rebates. Rebates are really small. I could give you a range. It could be $15 on a lot. But when you have a lot of homes, that adds up. So it isn't just that. It's also the fact that the warranty goes from 3 to 5. Typically, even for pumps, it goes 5 years. And that's pretty much unheard of, at least with pumps. So we know that we can offer the full gamut, but to me, and I think, and your end, well, you and I talked about before, oh, that's all great, but now you've got this developer agreement, and then you get a letter, and this happens to be, it's just a follow-up, but it doesn't matter whether it's a developer. It could be Lennar, it could be any of the other gazillion, I mean, there's a bunch, but as you know, there's only a few really big developers, and Lennar is
Correct.
one of them.
Oh, Lennar's huge.
And what's that?
Lennar's huge.
Um,
They're one of the big kahunas out here, that's for sure.
And the thing is, it's a compliment to you guys that that's who you work with. And that's who they want to work with you. So obviously you can get it done and you can do it right. Anyway, this was just a follow-up. One of the things that we do is we put together this product list for home specifications. Now, we do common areas, HOA, city areas, parks, there's all kinds of differences. So we have a couple different pages. And it doesn't have every product that we have. It has a lot of the main ones, and this gets updated. And then there's links. So that way, if you're on board and your developer's on board and says, hey, Mark, we don't know 70% of those because we use this, we use X, whatever. Well, we want to make sure whether it's training, you and me doing this, whatever, I never see it as a problem because I think a lot of products are alike. They might have different names, they do different functions, whatever. But this is
Oh,
something
no, I
that
think,
you
yeah, most
should,
of the manufacturers
yeah,
have very similar products that do very similar things.
yeah, I can always say, I can say ours is better in every regard, and even if it was, um, that's not always the case as far as what you're gonna spec. For, again, for multiple reasons.
Correct.
This is meeting with the specifier, this would be you and me. If we got the, you already know this, there's an agreement with Lennar. So you're gonna be on the same page. We're gonna be on the same page and say, hey, Mark, you know what? I don't need you, I know what to do in a story. Which is great. And I know that's how you guys are with a lot of your stuff. But meeting with you is important with this because I think once we get it all dialed in, we should be good on any corporate accounts as long as it's done right. And we're not gonna get them all, we don't.
Yeah,
So,
correct.
like
Well, and it
anybody,
also
you're
is, I
trying.
mean, every project, as you know, is different and there's different needs, mostly emitter side, emitter needs. Some are only drip, some have spray, some have rotors, some, as it changes on the thing. So every
Yes,
project's a little bit different typically. But yeah, once you have that basis, it should be pretty straightforward to be able to then use it on most projects moving forward.
exactly, well put. Um, this one, I just threw this out there, it's not even yours. Sorry about that, but
Just like
can't
the
have yours on
Idaho, I see the
everything.
stamp on it. So yeah.
This
I
one's
mean, not Idaho, I'm
interesting
sorry,
because,
Nevada with the stamp,
what's
Nevada.
that?
It has the Nevada stamp on it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's very unique because even though the project's here, the landscape architects in Arizona, somebody I used to call on, Bree Pickett, and then ACI is the irrigation consultant. So even when on our end, when we log things into our CRM, you have to know how all those things sort of fit together or they don't fit.
Yep.
I'm not just gonna go, if there's another rep, which there is, in Arizona, they need to know about this project. They really do, because they're the ones that are supposed to work, no different than you and me working together and you do one in Idaho.
Yep.
Not that you
Makes sense.
would, but you could. Anyway, that's just an example. Plans, we talked about title block. To me, there's a lot of information on there. Legends, obviously, there always is, and sometimes it's when you're making changes, especially if the project's already been designed and now, which we've already had happen, they wanna, make everything retroactive because it hasn't been installed. Well, you and I talked, you don't always have the same hydraulics. You talked about, tell me about approvals. You were talking about the approvals you have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge for us is, right, is it's the approval process can take up to 9 months to a year. So, I mean, we usually go through multiple different jurisdictions. So perfect example is one of the projects we're talking about, the preserves we're doing with Lennar. It actually goes through SCWA, so Sac County Water Agency, the city of Rancho Cordova, and the Cordova Parks and Rec department. So we have three different people that are reviewing all of those plan set, and they all are looking for different things. And so it becomes very difficult to make sure and very technical in the calculations that we're doing to meet the MWELA, which is here in California, obviously is huge, is the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance. And so to meet all that, they all have their own checklist of what we're having to meet. So it usually can take, I mean, the perfect example is the plan behind you, I think was eight submittals to get that approved through the process in probably 9 months to a year. So it's not like you can
Wow.
turn around and go, okay, we're just going to switch everything now, because that process is so time consuming on the front end and took so long to actually get everything approved to that point. It's very difficult to go back and then, I mean, it's really just starting the process again. It's not as simple as just swapping things out.
Yeah.
They will go through all your calculations over again.
So if, we already know this, but so let's just say, I said, hey, Kevin, we just, they already said, the developer already said, these ought to be 100% rainford. And then we get your legend, and then we start doing our equals or whatever.
Mhm.
So how does that work or not work when the fact is you've already designed it? And it's not like, I don't think it is, not like the contractor can sit there and say, hey, Kevin, or, Fern Leamy, do you guys approve doing 100% change, which is what the developer is basically asking? Well, what does that entail?
No, I think the biggest challenge is just liability of all of it, right? I mean, we're signing those plans saying that this system works. There's a little box on the bottom of everything that's MWELA required as well, that basically we're signing away saying this irrigation system was designed to meet all the standards. We have all the all the calcs and all the thing we put on those. And so as soon as you start switching anything, yes, you have similar products, right? There's a tree bubbler's a tree bubbler, right? You can do some of that, but they're not
Right,
necessarily running the same GPH or GPM, right? So then you get into your drip lines. If one's a 0.6 and one's a 0.7, well, that
right.
changes all of that as well, right? So all of a sudden, if the gallonage is changing just a little bit, well, then your valve size is changing. So then your sizing of your pipe has to change. Similar on rotors, right? Some work really well at 40 psi, some
Yeah,
work better at 45, some work better at 30. So depending on what you have, it's
yes,
not as easy as just saying, okay, this head gets swapped out for this head. Well, this head might need 40 pounds of pressure, but we've only designed the system with 30 pounds of pressure because we only have so much
right.
coming in, that it just doesn't, it's not as simple as saying, oh, you
Yeah.
can just swap a head out and go that route. So no, we would basically, especially on spray heads and even drip, because like I said, even if it's just a little bit of change in those gallons, but
Mhm.
that all affects, if you go from, I don't know, say 20 GPM to 25, and all of a sudden your valve size has to go up, or so instead of a 1 inch valve, now you're using an inch and a half. Well, that changes some of that
Yes,
as well, right? There's hydraulics that work all through all of that system. So making sure that the hydraulic side works is something that I don't think the contractors really focus on. And a lot of, it's just something that we have to deal a lot of with the calculations, and that's where we're signing that it's going to approve that way. So it's not as simple as just swapping something out, even though it looks like it should be that easy. There's just very
right.
little nuances of GPM and pressure that affects a little bit of that. It's like I said, even on heads, right? If one works really well at 30 and it sprays 20 feet, and then you have one that's at
Yeah,
40 that now sprays 25, or you do the reverse, a little bit of that spray change will change either your overspray patterns or your underspray patterns. So you're getting donuts around heads. I mean, there's just, we lay out
yes.
heads to their ultimate distances. And so if it changes just a little bit, that becomes a problem.
That's a really good point because the hydraulics, it may not seem like that much of a difference. And this was not the project that we've been talking about, but the one I've been working on recently, it was in Sacramento. This
Mm-hmm.
has already been approved. It's already been everything. It's submitted, approved, whatever. But just having a 5 psi difference and some of the gallonage things that you talked about in Sacramento, a lot of the areas, as you know, have really low pressure.
Yeah,
So the only
45 PSI is what they make to give you. So
yes, and the only way is to have a pump. So from a developer standpoint, it's like, okay, great, we'll do 100% Rainbird, but now we got to add a $15,000 pump. Sure, we like the sale, but I don't think, I know that's not the direction that we want to go. Otherwise, it would have been designed like that at the beginning.
Correct.
And
I
that's,
mean, we
you
try
know,
to, we work on, well, it's funny, we're doing a lot of the project with Lennar that's just a very tiny streetscape. And you're right. So Sac County Water guarantees 45 PSI. And we're right at
mhm,
that point. And all we're doing is drip. I mean, it's a couple drips and tree bubblers, and we're still right there just because, but that's what you got, and this is what you want to do. But to put for 4 heads, to put a booster pump on for a little bit of a trail frontage just to make 0 sense. So it's like,
yeah,
okay, we're not, this, what is the least that you're running stuff as low as you can possibly go, knowing you have to run those valves probably a lot longer, but it's 5 valves or 4 valves, so you can make that work. But yeah, putting a booster pump on, I mean, the
yeah,
booster pump would cost more than the rest of the system altogether.
yeah. So something that just, I didn't think of this before. I don't think we really talked about it. Okay, irrigation is, I think, unique in landscape architecture, irrigation consultants, all that kind of stuff. It's unique because there's a lot of calcs and there's there's legislation, there's all kinds of things. But I think what more need to be aware of. So what do you do? How does this work with play equipment? How does this work with concrete? How does this work with, or does it? Do you even have to deal with this? Is there even a corporate accounts kind of thing for all the other products that you deal with, shrubs,
We
trees?
do, like we did the Lifetime Fitness here in Roseville, and so they had a corporate account for their, with Belgard for the paving stones, right? So it was one of those things.
Okay,
So when we came into the project and they gave us a list, like everything, like a lot of people do, and said, this is what we want to use, right? These are the benches we use, this is the concrete, the pavers we use, this is our
yeah,
preferred vendors of everything. And so, yeah, I mean, you'll start to see that. It's usually much bigger accounts. So your Home Depots, your lifetimes, your that kind of stuff. Your small resident or, retail centers don't have that kind of stuff. But, those big guys that
right,
work in lots of different states, they have the similar thing. They have a set. And so the thought is, especially for Rainbird, or, if you want to get into some of those, get into those at that point. I mean, the other big one for us
yeah,
is municipalities, right? I mean, most municipalities we work with. And so even though we do a lot of work with the developer, most of it,
hmm,
especially that preserves project behind you, is then going to be taken over or maintained by the jurisdiction. Lennar's not taking it over. It's not an HOA maintained product.
right,
They give us a list that says we want X, Y, and Z as our irrigation, products. We want this. And so we get that all the time. Almost every park project we do in all of the different municipalities, they have a set list of this is what we want to use. And so we don't get a chance to change that. So, I mean, that's part
right,
of it for Rainbird as well, is get into some of those. If you want to get more products specified, get into that system to be this preferred specifier like you did for Rockland, right? Your controllers are the preferred
right.
controller for the city of Rockland. So every Rockland project, they're using one of your controllers. And I think I think your valves and the few of the other things, they're still on a different person for the
Yeah,
subsurface drip line. But yeah, I mean, but that's the big way to get into it, because most projects we work on, we don't have a say of what we can put in. It
right.
usually is a list of products given to us. And so back to your original point, as we were talking about this, it's all a timing thing, right? If we have that list at the very beginning as we start the project, we are used to doing that. We are used to looking at the list, coming up with
Right.
and designing to what that is. I mean, we do it for everything in the city of Folsom, everything in Rockland, everything in Roseville, and they're all different lists, of course, and different things.
Yeah, of
And
course.
of course. And so you just figure out. So we have standard notes for those jurisdictions based on what their standards requirements are. So it's
No,
good.
it's
It
really,
just really makes sense to do it up front. So when we run the calculations, we know they work. It's not as easy to change it in the fact, especially once it's gone through a million submittals and would have to go back and get reapproved. And
yeah,
it has time for that.
with what, yeah, with what you're saying, it actually is, this is where it has its complexities because it's, I mean, you can put it on a spreadsheet or whatever, and you could say, hey, they do CalSense. That's what they do. When it gets turned over, the city wants CalSense.
Correct.
You can go in, like you said, you go back to the city, but to push it at the time that it's happening, it's already too late. I'm not saying it's too late because I don't want the business, but I'm saying it's too late because those things have already changed. I know we've worked on other projects not mentioning any city or whatever, but I know there was a particular one, they did all empty rotators. And then we worked on the public agency side. We got them changed to our vans. Well, basically their preference was changed to our vans. And then
Mhm.
your office and myself, we worked together on making sure that we understood how that product worked, pressure, blah, 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 all the other stuff that
Mhm.
you guys look at anyway. But it was to me, that's like the process. That's the process if you want to get to that. Otherwise, and we have to do this all the time. When you say 100% Rainbird, what does that mean? Does that mean fittings? Does that mean valve boxes? Does that mean stuff that the city already has a preference and they're already telling Kevin this is what you have to do? I
Correct.
mean, those are the kind of things that have to be considered. But I think bottom line is up front, we can make most of it happen as long as we do it up front. This retroactive makes it really difficult because you and I talked about, I'll just throw out a number. Let's just say it was $20,000 for you to design this project. It's already
Design it, yes.
approved. Yeah. So we'll give you 20,000 to redesign it. Well, one, that's not smart for us. Uh, Two, you're probably not going to want to do it. And you and I talked about before with the liability. I think you said you didn't want to deal with that. That's not what you're going to do.
Well,
So
and also, I mean,
you're
we've already moved on, right? Once projects are approved, they fall off of our list of things we're working on, and we have, like, like Lennar, we're behind you. We have 5 more projects we're working with Lennar on right now. So the question becomes, all right, are we telling them we're not going to work on those projects to turn around and get this project done? And it doesn't
right.
happen overnight. I think that's the biggest thing, right? I mean, the types of projects we're working on, it takes a few weeks to put
Yes.
together an irrigation plan. It's not like we can just go snap the fingers and it's not like it's a front yard or something like some of the residential stuff, which is really easy to kind of change some of that out.
Yes.
And this, I mean, this will take us 2 to 3 weeks to get an irrigation plan that then would be swapped out that way, because it is almost
Yes.
starting from new. It's you're
Eh,
running all the same things over again, so we have to recalc everything. And so yeah, it's not just that easy. And that's the other thing, right? Is how do you find that other window of time? It's not just, especially on your end, right? Yes, you could pay us to do this, but then we're taking our other clients that we already promised things to, and how does that fit into the system? And it just,
Right.
you know, it's okay, yeah, we'll get to it in 4 months, which is probably not the answer at this point because it's probably out to bid and they want to get it in the ground. Well,
Yes.
we'd had
And
it
I
approved to
and
go put in the ground already, right? To then turn around, it's just,
yes.
it's really hard to jump that line and get it back into the queue.
Yeah, and I think too, that not everybody understands. I mean, you hear land FX more and more, and I know you guys use that,
Mhm.
but it's not just because of the fact you use land FX, it's because you guys are efficient. Um, but it's not like you just change something and everything magically comes up and it's going to be all correct.
Oh,
Sounds like I'm working against myself from a manufacturer standpoint, but the reality is I know that we need to work closely with you, but on what you need, just like when we do, I think last time I interviewed you, we just went through an interview just to get an idea where you're at with different products, blah, blah, blah.
mhm.
It gives me a good feel for, hey, maybe we should be looking at this, or hey, maybe we don't need to look at this. It's like that kind of thing. Not everybody will do that. We do appreciate it because even for this kind of deal, it's important because if you did 0% valve boxes, then hey, that's up to me, really, or up to the city,
Well,
or
I,
up to
I think that's
somebody,
an
right?
interesting question you just brought up. How many people actually call out the valve boxes in their plans?
Some do. I see some, very few do it on the actual legend, but I see a lot of them do it on the detail. And
Okay,
even on the details, it's like, let's say it's NDS specific, and then it's NDS all the way through or equal.
or equal.
We
Yeah,
do
I mean,
have
it's one of those
some
things
that,
that we just
yeah,
typically don't even call out because I'm fine. I'm fine with using any of them. It just is, it goes back to the same thing I was having this conversation. this is a complete sidebar, but concrete, right? So we can pick out concrete colors. And then as soon as we pick it
Yes.
out, then they'll be like, oh, we don't use Schofield, we use Davis color. And then you pick out a Davis color, like,
Yes.
oh no, we use a Solomon color. So it's one of those things, right? I mean, some of that stuff we don't specify because we know that contractor probably is going to use different than what the other contractor wants to use. And so that's part of the submittal process to us as well. If they say,
Yes.
and if it has a Hunter, or excuse me, or a, Netafim or a this or that, then we make a choices on if we want to make that substitution. So yeah, I mean, if we got something that had Rainbird boxes on it, I don't think we're going to say no. It's just, yeah, depending on what comes in that way. But yeah, we typically do not call out, I think, the boxes on our plans.
Yep. Exactly.
And I was just curious how many people
So
actually do.
I'll move. I know we're definitely on agreement over that, but I appreciate it because I appreciate what you say because it's directly from you and it doesn't behoove you really to say what I want you to say because it's not my business. That's not my business. I understand design. I understand what you do. I understand the cities. But I think what helps Kevin is that when it comes from you, and like anything, it's always better going to the source. You and I have done this before with the contractor versus designer. Not we're competing, but how it works, how the whole thing fits. We should be doing podcasts, but I don't do podcasts. So, I
I
don't know.
appreciate the
So
relationship with you.
I put this up. This is another benefit to the set I made from scratch. All this stuff is from scratch, so it's nothing official. But it's always on top of mind. Just like you get a new employee walk in, right? And you want them to know certain things. So
Mhm.
they may have to work with you directly, they may have to work with somebody else. I have the same thing. But in a different manner. So if it needs to be 100% compliance, then they need to know, they being us, need to know how to do a walkthrough, not to turn things on and off, just to look, spot check. Hey, that's an RWS, that's ours. No, it's Hunter's. No, it's not. If we had an agreement, we did this all right from the very beginning. This particular project was actually done pretty well.
Mhm.
Um, I still found fittings and other things. So I finally, again, I just made a video, did a YouTube compliance thing. Of course, the day I did it, it was pouring rain, which was not the best time to do a review. I had an umbrella,
It
but
happens.
whatever. I wanted to show that these are the kinds of things you look at. And there's little arrows showing you where on the plan, blah, blah, blah. Bottom line is the developer between you doing the best design, an installer hopefully doing the best install, and then us making sure that it's our stuff, it moves on to the next thing. It doesn't mean it's all going to be right this project, but over time, hopefully, the goal should be that not only do you, on your end, I don't think that's going to be an issue, but on the contractor end, like you said, everybody has different preferences and say, hey, you know what? I don't know anything about Rainbird fittings. Why don't I get cheaper fittings? Or why don't I
Mhm.
do this? I don't know anything about that. That's where it helps with the training. We even, every now and then, we don't do it all the time, but if a developer's interested, we'll put on a whole gamut of just, these are the products, these are how they work, this is why. Just so they have a little understanding. Most of them don't because they're not landscape architects. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So it's like a check and balance thing, making sure. And you can't always see it all. Like a lot of times the controller could be in a smaller thing, could be in a garage, so you have to figure out, pull it up on your phone, you're like, oh yeah, I guess that's ours, you know.
It's
But
interesting
you
that
only have
you
to do two or three of those, you don't have to do 100,
it's interesting you
that's
said
the
that.
whole
So
idea.
one of the first projects I worked on, this was years ago. I went out for their site visit and I was walking along and on the all the heads I could see from the sidewalk were Rainbird and you could see the heads and then I'm like, oh, there's just like a slope. And so I started wandering in. Every head that was within 2 rows off of that, they had that hit head. It was a hit, not a bid.
Oh,
So they had totally cheaped out on everything, thinking that we would not walk off the concrete and actually look at the rest of the sprinklers.
yeah.
So I was like, Wow. Okay. It was one of those kind of light bulb moments and you go, oh, this is how some of this works. So the contractor was just hoping to save a couple dollars, right? And then just sneak on out the back door with thinking that it was the same and we never would say anything about it. It was
Yeah,
crazy.
that's totally right. Yeah, that is funny because that's like, for me, that's like memory lane when I worked for a developer, but I was licensed landscape architect and my boss, licensed landscape architect, but when we do a job walk, a lot of times, and I have to say, a lot of the very young designers or just new to the field work would just walk by stuff and not really see it. So we're like, this is just on plants. So there was like 40,000 1-gallon
Oh
shrubs in
God.
San Clemente on a slope. And everybody's like, oh, what's the big deal? They planted them, they look good, the irrigation's good. Well, we lifted up a couple plants and it's like, hey, where's that tab you're supposed to have in there? There's no tab. And then we go a little further, and then there's a tab. And you go a little further, there's not. Before you know it, 90% of those plants do not have what was spec on the plan. So,
I mean,
then
no
we have
soil
to go
amendments,
back.
nothing. They just dug a hole, threw in and just, yep.
It's just, it's the same, it's totally different. But that always reminds me of that because that's why you need to spot check. It does not, it really from our end doesn't take any, we're doing the easy part. It doesn't take any time at all to look at the top and see the word rainbird or whatever. Like the valve box on this, I think valve boxes should be part of it, but we need to do more showing the difference between the valve box. But we find even on valve boxes that we're typically a little bit more expensive on our higher end valve box. There's another thing that we can deal with, even if, let's just say the project we were talking about, the preserve on that one, let's just say at the very beginning, we did everything right, you did everything right, blah, blah, blah. Well, then they're like, we would have done in NDS, but we would have did Rainbird and now we're paying 20% more and that just ate up all your rebates.
Yep.
So what about that? Well, that's where we have to step up honestly, and we need to say, okay, there's $5,000 credit to that contractor, distribute, however that's done, and make sure that that gets paid for. If you want to start doing that, you have to start, you have to be
Yeah.
accountable.
And it has to be
And everyone,
competitive. You're correct.
yes, you got to be competitive. I'm not going to go in there and, it's the same. Pumps could be $10,000 difference and do the same thing with the pressure. I mean,
Yep.
you have to be, so it's a lot more complex, but I think what I want to wrap up is that the whole thing is from your and my standpoint, we'll see how other people feel about the same thing. I don't know how much, the people are going to want to change their design and not get paid for it, or even if you do get paid for it, it sounds like, hey, so what? I don't want to go through all those approvals. I don't want to be liable and
Oh
so
yeah,
on.
and I don't think the client wants to go back to I don't think they understand it would have to go back through and look at all that because once again, they don't understand the process of getting they just want the plans approved. They don't get what they're looking at or what's taking so long to get plans approved.
Yeah. Well, I took enough of your time, but I hope we went somewhere.
No, I appreciate it, Mark. I think it was good.
I, you always do good at this. I should just let you do it and talk to yourself, because it
Oh,
would be a lot easier for
it's
you.
creepy.
Whatever works.
Yep.
No, I'm going to take a look and then see if I've got to do. Um, I'm just going to see. Maybe we just take some pieces or whatever. But I'm going to go back. I usually like start with my boss. He's always good about approving stuff. He's always good about listening. Um, because he's the one that was promoting that other one you did.
Yep.
He
Good.
he promotes that to the company. That was not like a little thing. It was like a big thing, which I feel good about because it's the communication that you guys did with just a few questions. This is a lot more involved, I think, than what we did that time. This is not that
There's a lot
incredibly
of
simple.
complexities to it. That's for sure.
That's why I don't golf because we'd be doing this, we'd be talking about this the whole time.
Oh God. No.
Or it might be somebody else that you used to know that used to, I'm not gonna put this on that, but used to throw his clubs into the
Into the lakes,
ravine.
yes.
Was that Wayne, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It was, I felt so bad that it was sort of my fault. Everybody was laughing. And so I was laughing, and then he didn't want to ever golf again.
Yeah, some people just need to relax a little bit sometimes. It gets
But
it.
were you there at that? Were you there at that
No,
time?
I
don't
wasn't
think
there
you
for that
were.
one.
It was Steve.
Yeah.
Steve was there, but you know, Steve's so easygoing, as you know. But Wayne went up there to tee off. Oh yeah, you can get a little bit of grass,
Yep.
but he got that much grass.
Yeah.
It was like a spaceship, and it literally went like 20 feet. So it's one of the funniest things I've seen, but it was not the right time to laugh, for sure.
I get it.
Just under your
Laugh
skin.
at yourself.
Anyway, I will let you get back. But thank you for taking the time. Is there anything else? If there's anything I've forgotten on this or anything else you guys need, just let me know. I'm
I should-
happy to
I'll
help.
think about it.
All right.
All right.
Sounds good. Thank you, sir.
Have a
Appreciate
good one.
it.
Bye.
You too. Bye.